think I may, yeah, well, I think I'm in here. Because yeah, it should probably shows me as Santise Beatty, I'm assuming.
Did you log in using his account?
I think so. Is this, how do I know that this is the right?
Okay, here.
Oh, wait, actually here, I no, this must be the right one. Because I'm admitting some people here. So I have to put them in then. Is that what it has to happen?
Yeah, so as the host,
Jadone, can you hear me?
I can. Can you hear me?
I can. Hold on one second. I'm trying to work it with this our assistant here, Priscilla here. Yeah.
do you want to flip your camera really quick
Yep.
just to see if it's
Yep. I'm gonna flip it here. Here we go. So I have,
Yep. Okay, and then if you want to press, oh, it is recording.
Yep.
Perfect.
yep.
Lovely. Oh my gosh. I can take it.
Hey, Jaden, this is Priscilla hanging out with me.
That's so funny.
Yeah.
Man.
Okay, so I have to,
sweet. So
I'll have
it's
to
recording,
admit
so you should
people.
be all good.
Okay, cool. All right. We'll
All
make it
right.
happen.
Thanks, Ian.
You're a rock
Have
star.
a wonderful
All right, you too. Say hi to Santise and the team. Okay, bye.
For sure.
Yeah, change my. Jaden, how you doing, man?
I'm doing good.
Long time no see, man. How's that little one of yours doing?
She's doing good.
How fun is that, man? Are you at home today or working from the office?
Yeah, working from the office.
What office you have? Which one are you in?
Well, we have a ton of construction going on around here. So we're getting a bunch of windows replaced. So if you hear loud sounds, it's because we don't have windows.
Yeah.
But I'm closest to Sycamore here.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
this office used to have like a doorway in it. And this for a while was the youth, and this was like a seating room
Yep.
here.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Oh yeah. I remember when Austin and Jenny and I were in there. Yeah, man. As a matter of fact, I saw a video just the other day of Jonathan and I and someone else doing like a some kind of something that popped up on Facebook, which is crazy,
Yeah.
man.
Yeah, so now the doorway is gone, but so
Okay.
now two individual offices.
Yep.
But
Very
yeah.
cool. Very cool. And how's the husband doing? How's Noah doing?
Doing good. Yeah.
Did you guys have youth last night or?
Yep. Yeah, he did.
Very cool. Sweet. And then looks like we got Travis on here. I don't think I've met Travis before. Have we met Travis?
I don't believe so.
Very cool. And where's where are you calling from, Travis? Where's home for you?
So I'm in upstate South Carolina at Alive
Okay.
Wesleyan, one of the
Yes.
campuses.
Yep. Very cool. Very cool. Yeah, matter of fact, I was just in North Carolina just last week with district youth presidents, and Heath was there, and
Oh yeah,
so was Matt. So
okay.
assuming you probably talk with those guys quite a bit. So
Oh yeah, Matt Irvin.
yep,
Irvine.
yep.
Yeah.
It's actually the first time I'd actually met him in person, so that's pretty cool, man. So, and what's
Yeah,
your
Matt's a cool
role?
guy.
Yeah, what's your role, Travis?
Since I work at a campus, I'm bivocational. So I'm in education, but I do next gens, I do kids, youth, and now I'm starting young adults at our church too. So
Oh man, very cool. Very cool. And Jaden, what's your main responsibilities right now?
So I'm experienced pastor, so I see all experience in every ministry throughout the church. That includes online, and then I also see I oversee our young adult ministry as well.
Very cool. Very cool. That's awesome, man. That's awesome. Well, hopefully we get a few more who jump in here. I had several people who said they'd jump in here. I had Santis, I had to log into his account, so just making sure we're all good here. But we'll eventually get there. Were you guys able to download Young Adult Ministry Now book by Steve Argue at all, or do you have access to it?
Yeah, I'm trying to do that here now. I don't know
Okay.
if I'll get it by the end of the
Okay.
call, but yeah.
And I'll probably even drop in a link here too. Steve had we were texting this morning. He just actually found a version of a hard copy of the book that's actually being printed. He just sent me where you can order that too. So I'll drop a couple links in there too, because I know you can get it on Kindle, but you can also get it from Fuller Youth Institute. It's an ebook drop in, and then you can just print it. Or he actually has a hard copy now that just released in the last couple days. So let me see if I can find that really quick here too. Mm-hmm. All right. Well, hey, let's jump in here. I have a feeling we'll have a few more jump in. I had several people say they're in, but I think there may be confusion over time zones too, potentially. So I definitely had several people texting and calling, going, "Hey, is it starting?" I'm like, "Well, it's 11." I think I put 11 to 12, but it's either I think Priscilla and Santis did it from like Fishers from Eastern time, and so I know for me it's 9 a.m. here in Mountain Time. Jaden, you're probably 10 a.m. for you, I'm assuming, and then you're Travis, you're probably 11, I'm assuming, out there on the East Coast. So I'll let them in as they come in. I'd love to hear kind of like from you guys first a little bit. Just I know I just asked you where you're from, but maybe just give us a little bit about your ministry background, what you've been doing, and would love to just even hear like, why young adults. So like when you look at that, and when we'll talk through this, but when we talk about like young adult ministry, we really see it as is the Wesleyan Church, and as I'm working with Steve Argue and Fuller Youth Institute, as like 18 to 29-year-olds. And so kind of this, not just post high school, but like college age, also young marrieds, also different stages of life and everything else. So would love to just kind of hear a little bit from you. Feel free to share a little bit, kind of your stage and where you're at in ministry, and then kind of where you're at, and then why young adults. Why is it a passion that God has laid on your heart? So we'll start with you, Jaden. How about that?
Yeah, well, I'm at Celebrate Church in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, and I took over the young adult ministry almost 2 years ago, and we were doing monthly gatherings, and we were calling them culture combos. So when I came here on staff, we were meeting with a cohort of young leaders in our church that we really wanted to instead of just from a staff standpoint to lead a young adult ministry, but really have it to be our congregation leading it. And we started in August of 2021, that was, and we were doing monthly gatherings, but it quickly became, it almost seemed kind of like a youth group for young adults, and that wasn't really the design for it. It was really trying to create like a big church for a small church of young adults in a large church that we're in. And we aren't doing our monthly gatherings anymore, as when I took over, I was under a leader that was leading the ministry. And when I took over, we just wanted to really evaluate what we were doing and how we were doing it. And some of the feedback that we got was not to do our monthly gatherings anymore, and to really do four events for young adults during the year, so every 3 months, and really push and grow our life groups for young adults. We felt like and saw there was more relationship and growth happening in those smaller communities and homes. And so that's where we're at now. And we do a summer bash. And so we have a couple in the church that has an indoor pool and in our church, and we did a summer party out there, and we're also gonna do a winter party. And then we also provide different classes. So we'll talk about time management, because that's a really big thing for young adults that are in that. We classify young adults in our church like 18 to like 34. Just the area that we are in, that's really what our city is how we classify young adults in our city. So it's a little bit of more years and seasons that are different and challenges that we face. So that's kind of where we're at now, and it's more evolving, and our church is getting younger and younger as we're looking to the future and the next leadership of our church. And so really trying to grow the solid young people we have in our church to lead that next wave of where our church is going.
Awesome. What would you say, Jaden's been the biggest success, and then also like what's your biggest challenges right now?
I would say our big success, it's kind of both, like the challenge and the success that we have is really our life groups. Is we see a lot of transformational change and people really lean on their life groups. I would say with that though is we don't have enough young adult life groups to push people to. And there we had so part of one of our four events during the year this fall, we did a life group interest night. And so we personally invited a lot of young adults that we knew that they are capable of leading a life group in their home, and invited them to that, and also invited our congregation to it as well. So it wasn't just an exclusive young adult event, but it was a church-wide, even though we were putting it on as a young adult ministry. So we lack young adult leaders, and that's something that we're really trying to focus on this year as a church as a whole. I don't oversee life groups. One of our adult ministry pastors oversee that, but from the young adult perspective, I help with that, just as I'm connecting with more young adults, trying to grow those leaders, because we do see the most impact in young adults' lives in those smaller communities. So that's kind of that's the big
Yep.
success we have, but also the challenge.
Yeah, and I would say you probably I would probably say we find that same thing out here in Colorado too. You know, like there is this big influx of whether it's young married couples who want in groups or different things, or as we say, like young families with young kids. It's just hard to find enough leaders who are going to lead in those areas and stuff like that. So awesome. Well, Travis, talk to us a little bit about where you're at. I know you said you're bivocational, to kind of know like what all you do and stuff like that, and kind of your, why young adults and what's working there live down in South Carolina, and also what are some of your biggest challenges and stuff that you have.
Yeah. So I started with youth about 8 years ago. Picked up kids about 2 years ago. It just seemed like a this made sense for our context. We're about 100 attendance average at our campus, so we're kind of small. Young adults kind of came about as something I felt like it was just a tug on from God, a tug on my heart from God. We were at camp this summer. They're talking to the kids about your next steps. How can you go out into your community? How can you minister to others? And I just felt like God was telling me you need to do something with all these kids that we have that have graduated from the last 8 years of when I've been over youth. I felt like we just had nothing for them. They had nowhere to connect, nowhere to feel like they were being plugged into the church. So that's where it started. And then I actually had some of my teens that are in their 20s. I say teens, young adults that came to me that are in their 20s, and was like, hey, like I would love if we did something kind of like we did in youth group where we just connect, a small group kind of thing. So that's kind of where it started. It literally started in like September. So I'm brand new at this. So that's why I'm kind of jumping in just to kind of learn as much as I can. Because I'm still trying to figure out like what the best look is going to be for this. And we're kind of doing, since we're kind of small, we're doing kind of just a small group model really right now. So we're just meeting once a month. We're actually meeting next Thursday for our second meeting. So yeah, I'm just kind of in this whole process of just really starting it. So I'm looking for insight and best practices and how to make it
Awesome.
work for our people. We have
Yeah.
about a dozen that are interested right now that have been showing up when they can and trying to stay connected with them. So.
Awesome. Well, and that's kind of why we kind of changed, or I should say, maybe just tell you a little bit about myself. I live out in Fort Collins, Colorado, and have been in anywhere from like family ministry stuff, like middle school, high school, like student ministry, world, college, young adult stuff for the past 28 years. I actually went for the first time. My life had a pretty radical upheaval last year, where my wife actually passed away in heart surgery. And so, God's had this crazy redemptive story. Since then, I've actually remarried to actually her best friend, my best friend, kind of growing up. It's actually our youth pastor's sister. So again, she came over on every trip that we were with. We grew up in Michigan back in the day. She lived down in the Springs. We were actually ordained on the same day. She teaches at Fuller, so she oversees the Masters of Arts in Global Leadership there. She's been on staff at Fuller for 12 years, works remote, is an ordained Wesleyan pastor, was with Global Partners for 10 years in Bosnia with her kids and everything. And so been a crazy life story for that. But for me, what I actually entered into is I have my wife who's graduating with her PhD in education next May. I now have a son another son, I should say, who's going to graduate Severance High School here. I now have another daughter who's down at Boulder. She's with Deion Sanders there at CU Boulder, about 45 minutes away from us. My daughter Anna, who was at Indiana Wesleyan for nursing, came home after her mom passed away because it was too much. She tried to start back in and it was just too much. So she took a semester off and she got back in to nursing at Colorado Christian University. So she should be able to hopefully be on track to graduate in May. So just 1 year later after taking a year off. And so she'll complete that. And then I have a son who went into the Marines and got out, is married, and actually lives not far from where Jaden and stuff is. Jaden, no, Christian and Natalie lives in Harrisburg and is attending, kind of doing it the opposite way. So he's 24, I believe. Yeah, 24. And he is a sophomore at University of Sioux Falls, finishing out a degree, and then runs a company out of Wisconsin for somebody there. So my life's kind of radically changed, where I actually, again, I was full-time in the church world up until just a week after Easter this year, and I went part-time. And so part of that was the stage of life we're in, to be able to pour into these young adult children we have, my wife, as we had just gotten married, and just looking at life a little bit different. And so Santis had actually hit me up. I still work at the church, so I'm at Generations Church in Greeley, Colorado. I oversee the residency program there, where we have 4 to 6 residents who, recent college graduates are called a full-time vocational ministry I oversee. And then I also, I actually do a side hustle gig job that pays the bills. And so this is crazy. This is crazy to even say this. I actually oversee TNT firework tents. So I'm the Colorado area manager for TNT fireworks. And so all these pop-up tents at Sam's Clubs and Walmarts and stuff like that. It's a 9-day sale. where I oversee, actually 60 different groups. So most of these churches, organizations, and groups, not only do we make money as a company, but I was able to, through what they raised off of the profit, and then also what they raised off of tips, was $751,000 this past summer. And so we have a church down in the Springs that Lindsay Hunt from Oklahoma Wesleyan, I believe, is where she went, the Anchor Church, who she literally, like, they run 2 tents just so they could pay her as a pastor and keep the church walls open. And so it's kind of a cool thing that I do. It's a side hustle job that actually pays me full time, even though right now I'm only working 5 to 10 hours a week for it, which allows me to really just be a pastor, and to not actually take a paycheck from the church that much. And so Santis Beatty and Next Gen just said, Santis, when he took over for Next Gen, working under Ed Love at headquarters, just said, hey, like, I think we're missing something here with Next Gen. Next Gen, we've been talking about kids and youth forever, or family ministry, however, now that's the buzzword, Next Gen. But he just said, the issue with that just is, what are we actually doing in the global Wesleyan church in North America and beyond for, like, just as you said, Jarvis, what about the last 8 years of kids who cycled out? Where are they in their faith today? What are we doing with them? And how can we come alongside of them as they maybe fallen away from the faith, or they come back, or they kind of have kids come back, or they're in the area? You guys know it, man. Working with young adults is a transient thing. So my goal is to, again, I'm just a young adult catalyst. I'm paid I'm literally 6 hours a week. So I'm not to try to get this whole movement for North America off the ground. And so my goal is to do book studies. Steve Argue is going to be with us here in a few weeks, right before Thanksgiving, on a call. I may have to move the time to the afternoon to get him on it. But we want to do book cohorts. I'm going to be at Follow this year. I don't know if anyone's going to be at Follow this year. If you are there, okay, awesome. There actually is a young adult track. And so we'll probably be teaching, some leadership stuff with young adult ministry now, but we'll also be doing tracks for young adults. And so I'll be looking for speakers. I'll be looking for people who'd be interested, who are already going to be there to maybe jump in, or even your thoughts on, like, hey, what would be if we got 4 to 6 breakout sessions? Like, what should we be talking to young adults about? You guys are in the trenches working with them and stuff like that. So, and then from this, I'll actually be out of the book study by the end of December, is trying to form what I'd call like a young adult catalyst for the Wesleyan Church, a whole group. So even though I'm the catalyst, it's kind of like Santis overseeing Next Gen. He's one guy overseeing youth ministry for thousands of churches. But like, what can we do? My goal would be, and my vision would be, is to see us have a young adult ministry catalyst in each region. So we would have one in the Northwest region. We'd have them out in the Mountain Plains. We'd have them, in South Carolina and North Carolina, like that. We would actually train people to become specialists in young adult ministry in locations. And so I'm working with grants, and I'm working with Steve Argue and the team there, Andrew Jung with Fuller Youth Institute, to say, hey, what would it look like for us to actually gather, a dozen or 15 or 20 local people to be trained for a one-day conference at headquarters in young adult ministry, where they would literally turn over everything that we talk about, from the books to the resources and stuff, where we can then help our districts and stuff like that too, and kind of be a specialist. But for us, again, we're also learning at the same time. So that's a little bit about me, about where I'm at, and again, my passion for it. Santis, if you never met Santis before, you need to meet him sometime. He's awesome. I actually hired Santis, and he'll tell the story. I actually hired Santis when I was at Kentwood Community Church in Grand Rapids, or Kentwood, Michigan. I was working under Wayne Schmidt, and we needed a high school pastor. And so I actually went down to a National Youth Workers Convention, was talking with Dave Ron, who he had in classes, and just said, hey, we're looking for somebody non-white to lead a healthy multi-ethnic student ministry alongside of myself and others. And so I had the privilege of bringing him to the Wesleyan Church. So I said I was his boss for about 4 or 5 years, and now he's my boss. So it's kind of fun that way. And so we've got a kind of unique team. Priscilla Young, if you haven't met Priscilla, you probably will. She's our admin gal. She's part-time. She just moved from Sioux Falls, where she was at the Ransom, to New Jersey, where she oversees a Korean youth group out there. She just moved like 2 weeks ago. Stephanie Ryan, I think you'd probably know Stephanie. Would you, Travis? Yeah, so she's overseeing the kid part of it. And then we've got Clay Scroggins, I think his last name is. I don't know if you know him too. He's from South Carolina. He's a story writer. He's right out of college too. He's kind of doing some story stuff. So Santiste just took a different approach to say, hey, what if we found experts in the field to do it? So my goal is to really help resource, to help come alongside, to paint that vision. And again, where it comes from for me is we'll jump in to talk through a little bit of the book and stuff like that, or some thoughts on young adult ministry. Was again, having a 24-year-old who had a non-traditional route to where he is today, where he's young and married, but again, active in a local church and serving. Having a 22-year-old who was at college, came home from college, and is now finishing out at home and eventually be launched in. It's, and then having a 20-year-old who's at Boulder now, and now a senior in high school who's who loves to go for the social life but hates high school and doesn't want to go into college but possibly the military. And so you find this completely non-traditional routes that we're finding young adults taking today. 4 of them who I live under, I shouldn't say live with me, 3 of them, super attached, and 1 from a distance with Susan and I, but it's just a very interesting stage of life. And so I kind of come from the higher end here where we're at as far as the adult part of the young adult catalyst movement. And then we'll actually be we'll be hiring, I think, a younger Latino gal who will be working with young adult ministry too, who would be young adult age. Because we recognize again too, like, what's this need for, why do we have the almost 50-year-old white guy leading young adult ministry at a Wesleyan church, right? Like, how do we do that? And so we are very cautious with our team, with our next gen team, to make sure that we are, we've got 3 guys, 3 gals, and we've got 3 people who are white and 3 people who are non-white. And so we want a very diverse team, because again, we're leading the next generation, which is very diverse. So that's a little bit about me. What I'd love to do is, and I don't know, Jade, if you were able to download it, I put a couple of links in there and stuff too, but I'd love to jump into the intro a little bit and talk through Steve Argue's book, Young Adult Ministry Now. And thought it would just be good to see if there's anything there, Travis, was there anything there, or anything there that kind of jumped out to you as you kind of just were reading the intro? I thought it was interesting on the ebook that I downloaded here. Again, I think this was on page 8. It just says, after all, these young adults aren't complete strangers. They're the once teenagers who invested into your youth ministry programming. They're the young people who chose to stay local rather than leave town for college. The ones who jumped right into the workforce and are trying to make their way. The transplants who showed up with overwhelming schedules, yet few relationships into your towns, right? It says this: their place in life is diverse and changing. They're in between jobs and want to make a difference. They're newly married and they're happily single. They're post-military and post-grad school. They're corporate fast trackers and entrepreneurial starters. They're brokenhearted yet hopeful, far from home while also trying to feel right at home, right where they're at. Church suspicious but spiritually interested. You know them, you love them, you intermittently hear from them as their paths cross in person and online. Probably because you care, they reach out to you for advice, for support, for coffee, for connection. That connection is real to you and is often a lifeline for them. And then it kind of goes on, but the task seems overwhelming. I thought that was just a great statement of who we're trying to reach, right? Who are these young adults that we are actually going after? And so I didn't know, in the intro there, if there was anything. It talked about young adults taking up little space in the church. It talked a little bit about the intro of young adult budgets in the church, and the lack of that. And it also feeling under-resourced. And so I didn't know if you had any thoughts on that, as far as the young adults you're trying to reach, and the lack of resources, the lack of them in the church at times, maybe being hopeful. Anything there from that first one? And again, part of it, young adult ministry leaders can't invest much time into young adults because, again, they typically have multi roles in the church too. So any thoughts on that with young adult ministry from either of you?
I just, I thought it kind of reaffirmed kind of what we were thinking. It seems like I know we as a church, we put a lot of emphasis on kids, and then as youth, it's not as much. And then with young adults, it's we just kind of forget about them, and it's kind of like you throw them out in the water and they either sink or swim kind of thing, and see if they come back around as married, adults that have kids. It just seemed like we were just kind of, it was just a gap. It was just, we just kind of jumped over. So a lot of that resonated. It was very true. And trying to change that, to realize that, as with most churches, it seems like that I talk to, that I have friends with, our churches are getting older, and that middle age we're losing them. And I think a lot of that is because we just don't invest in them between that 18 and 30. It's kind of like a crapshoot, just if they show up again or if not. So yeah, that a lot of that really resonated with me.
Any thoughts on that from you, Jaden, at all?
Yeah, so I think maybe I think I know I'm in a really good place with where we're at as a church, because from our leadership and our LBA and our senior pastor now, they're really trying to um give the decisions to the next generation. And so like I sit on our leadership here at the church, and so does my husband, and Billy being raised up to be a part of the next season of our church. And this happened 3-4 years ago of our what's going to be next for our church. And so
You'll be well.
yeah.
Okay.
Sorry.
Fine, Ben, you're done.
And so I know I'm in a really good place for leading the young adults and being empowered. Like we have a ton of construction, and we sat down a year and a half ago, and it was asked from our senior pastor and our LBA of, what do you want our church to look for? Like, how can we have a church designed for young adults to want to be here, not just on Sunday mornings and be attracted to it, but that they want to be here 7 days a week. We have a daycare and preschool for young families and young couples to put their children here in an environment where they can see the word of God every day. Like my little girl is here in the building and at daycare, and like I know she is getting, even though she's 1 year old, she's getting the love of Jesus and is being taught of what the word of God means. So our church is really set up for the next generation and how to empower us. And I definitely feel empowered, but also I really rely on the older generation from their experience and their skills and their knowledge. And we're always said that we, as the young generation, were able to take and make the decisions, and the older generations, they're going to block for us. So if we make a mistake, they're going to take the fall from it. If we're going to do something that's really successful, like they're going to give us the credit. And I really feel that, and I see that in our church. And it's been a major shift of where we have been as a church, because our senior pastor, he planted this church, and obviously as a pastor, it's been his vision, but now that vision is being released to the younger generation. But there still is gaps, because that's happening here internally. But for our congregation, that's something that is still in the works of how to bridge the gaps that we're seeing from our congregation of older generation, younger generation.
Super good, super good. Any other thoughts there from the intro? Again, it's Jade, it sounds like you got, and again, no one celebrates I was there, again, great resources and stuff like that, typically get behind, to help do stuff. Travis, how do you find as far as like resources, as far as your time and allowance, or as far as like what the actual church can provide? It was interesting that the average annual budget for young adult ministry out of their research. So again, what was cool about how Fuller Youth Institute did their research, and Steve, is that they, it was done over a time period of 2016 to 21. It was a 5-year period with a bunch of churches. It was heavily vetted. Actually, 2 of our Wesleyan churches are named in it. We're a part of it. So College Wesleyan Church in Marion, Indiana, and then Berkeley Hills Wesleyan, a buddy of mine, Kyle Brown, in Grand Rapids, were a part of the study, actually, of the 40-some churches that were a part of it. But what was interesting is, again, the average annual budget, again, and it didn't matter. What was interesting was how the, kind of, different size churches, different people within the church leading young adults, but the average budget was between for the $501 and $1,250 budgeted towards young adult stuff. And so Jen, I'd probably say you're probably in a very healthy spot to like be able to ask and to receive. But Travis, how do you find that for you there at Alive and for different things with staffing, with budgets and stuff like that? Even just the basic, like, hey, like, and don't necessarily always need full-time staff or budgets to make ministry happen, but what do you see as far as resources and stuff like that?
Well, it's because we're starting this out, like even our main campus doesn't really have like a actual not youth, young adult budget or ministry. So it's kind of a new frontier for us as a whole. And I think I'm kind of the guinea pig for it, to see how that goes. We also, our campus pastor actually moved on to another position. So we're in this weird kind of transition too, but I see this as if it's something that takes off, that starts to kind of get some traction, that we're going to evaluate in the spring and see, hey, can we allot some resources and funding as a budget line for young adults? So that's my hope, that we can start building something that's going to kind of take a place as part of our ministries. But right now it's kind of just me to pulling a little time out. Kind of, I have some people, some members of our church who think this is a great idea and want to be involved and are excited. So, they're willing to open up their house and their home and, provide those things that maybe the church is not able to do right now. So we're kind of figuring it out as we go.
Yep, which is actually brilliant there, Travis, too, because again, obviously, too, like young adults are different than youth or middle. You have a middle school and high school kids over to your house. You're like, man, I did that for years. I mean, like but you have to be at that stage of life and stuff like that. But yeah, when you look at maybe some of the olders or some who are empty nesters now or have college age kids or just out, kind of the phase that I'm in. Like I have 2 kids at home, but relatively they're almost never here because they're always working at Target. They're always working out. They're always at school, always on the road. But you were like, hey, we're a home where we'd love to host. As a matter of fact, we're at the stage of life. We can not only host, but we can provide food. Like, that's what we do. We have our residents over, we have people over. And so I think, again, it's creating that space and finding, I have found through the years, like maybe sometimes it's a little bit of those older adults. And I hate to say older because I put myself in that camp of that, like, 45 to 55 or 45 to 60, where again, you still feel like you're young and hip in some ways, or at least you can somewhat relate because you got kids, but more than anything, you finally reach a point in life where you have resources that you're able to just have kids over. You got, whether it's a bonfire, whether it's barbecue, whatever it may be, just creating that safe place and fun place for them. And I don't have little kids running around and stuff like that. So I always tell people, hey, think outside the box and always ask. I mean, think about it here for my job for the Wesleyan Church, like this has never really been done before. We've had college age stuff in the past, from a headquarters perspective, but to say, hey, we want to be intentional. Even if it's, again, think about it, like the entire West Church is paying me 6 hours a week and somebody else to just say, how could what our goal is to create momentum with 18 to 30-year-olds in the Wesleyan Church. And so I know I'm going to have some work to do to build a young adult catalyst team around me who, again, across the country, but then to find resources and dollars amongst the global Wesleyan Church to say, hey, like we can't just let generations continue to go by. There are great things happening in some churches in some areas. And we gotta, find out what's working. Like you said, let's not reinvent the wheel, but let's find ways to come into this thing together. So it was interesting. Kind of the intro ended with, like, again, some of you guys are youth leaders. So it's interesting. Typically those who work with young adults, some are youth leaders, some are young adult ministry leaders, kind of working 18 to 25. There's not a whole lot of those. Some are associate, next gen, or family pastor ministry types who are working with young adults. Some of you are volunteers. That tends to be probably like the biggest one in the church overall that I tend to find. And then I love it. Some of you are young adults yourselves, again, looking for community from not being isolated, whether just like, man, like I just simply want to create something that's for me within the context of the local church. And so Yeah, so kind of cool. Like I said, and it was super helpful to clarify that too, even for you, Jaden, to say, hey, like young adults here is like 18 to 34. Like you have to kind of make it what's there. I can remember when I was, for a season of time, out in Colorado, we were like, hey, it's 18 to 25 because we didn't know what to do beyond. And then we kind of realized probably the same thing that you guys realize is like, well, we start having all these young married couples hanging around and they're young adults. Like they're still trying to figure out life. Some have kids, some don't have kids. And how do we actually come alongside of them? And so we're like, hey, let's expand this a little bit more. So let's talk through a little bit chapter 1 too. And again, what I love about so much of this is it's research data stuff, or it's what they've experienced and seen through churches across the country, which is super helpful and beneficial. I do think, again, for all of us and for the movement, like there'll be probably some like transition points and some markers and things that we can learn. And then my goal is to get you guys as many resources as possible too. And so that's where, again, Steve and others come alongside. It'll be great. So chapter 1 kind of starts off about the real paths of today's young adults. And again, it kind of moves from the linear path that it used to be. So again, I graduated high school way back in 92. And it was a very linear path at that time. You graduated high school, you went to college. And again, I went to a Christian college, which meant at the end of a Christian college experience, I needed to be what? Married, right? Okay, I needed to be married because again, I was getting then. So it was like high school, college, married, ministry, kids, buy a home, stay in ministry, retire. I have grandkids. It's this very linear approach to life. And for the most part, it's just the way that the world worked, right? I would have said 15 years ago, you have to have a college degree to get anywhere in America today. Today, that's completely outside the window. My 24-year-old went to the Marines for 5 years. He came out, he's in college, but his wife's best friend's dad hired him to run a company. He's a corporate manager for a company that exists in Wisconsin. And he's now he's learning business stuff, but he has no idea what he's doing half the time, but they're teaching him to do it. But what it was is there's a void of people who understand leadership. Well, he was ranked high in Marines and he was able to do all this stuff, and he's a leader. He knows how to lead people. And so he'll call me at times and be like, Dad, I have to literally meet with a 48-year-old, like somebody who's literally your age, who's selling product to people, to kind of say, hey, you're actually doing this the wrong way. Like, how do I? And I would just give him pointers. But I'd say, like, again, leadership principles are leadership principles, like, again, Jaden, as you said, like, as being a young 20-something who's serving in the LBA, who's serving on a board, who's actually trying to like push the mission and vision of Celebrate Further and Different. And like, again, like we need young people to lead in incredible ways. And so it starts off with this linear approach to stuff. And then it actually gets to the next page where it talks about the real path of young adults and how it's just kind of however. And so it may be from high school to traveling abroad to an internship to a gap year to college, back or living together and then getting married and then finding Jesus and then being a part of the church. And then, talk to me a little bit about that. Your experiences with the young adults you work with. How have you seen maybe that shift? Jade, you may be like, that's just been life that all I've known because you're young enough, but talk to me a little bit about this change, because I do think it is probably one of the bigger realities in which we face.
Yeah, I think, a lot of the older generation, I think they think that, I feel like it's weird talking about young adults because I'm a young adult myself, but I think that's from a place of, I also know, like, I also can relate a lot to the young adults that I'm pastoring and leading. But I think the older generation, they would say that it's like rebellion and it's not the way that they've done things. And I think in ministry, it's not about like reinventing how we're doing ministry or the goal that we're trying to accomplish, but the way that we get there is going to look different with young leaders leading. And I wouldn't say that it's rebellion, but that it's passion. And a lot of the passion that young adults have seems to be like aimless, but they do want to be a part of something that's bigger than themselves. And obviously that's like where the local church needs to step in and see that there's a community that you don't have to live with all of this hurt and all this baggage that a lot of them bring. And I think a lot of the baggage that young adults have is, oddly enough, it's from parents and their upbringing and their family have seen a lot of, they went to church, but like they went home and saw their parents not really living it. And so they're like, why would I want to be a part of this organization or platform that I think a lot of young adults think the church is? But it's now coming in as a church and being a church that is really committed of what we say we do, we follow the people that we say we are. And so instead of looking at about with young adults is that it's rebellion, it's really passion. And how do we take the passion that they have in their individual lives and create a place in the church that they can actually live that passion out, and for them to be a part of something bigger than themselves.
It's good. Any thoughts from you, Travis?
Yeah, I mean, I agree. Like just looking at like the kids, I keep saying kids. I'm just so used to them because I've known them for so long. The young adults, um, they they are going in so many different directions, and because like some of them they married right out of high school. They were high school sweethearts. Some of them went to school. Some of them went to work. Some of them are doing nothing. So they're doing all kinds of different things. And kind of like you were saying, I feel like there's just this hunger for community and relationships and feeling like you can connect with people, especially that are, even maybe are on different paths, but are in your same kind of age group. Because many of them, it seems like once they graduate high school, they lose all those relationships and connections and kind of, I guess, part of their identity. And they're just searching for this kind of new identity. I see a lot of the two of it being like them looking to be a part and make an impact in something that's greater than what they're doing by themselves. So yeah, I see that a lot. And I guess my challenge is going to be trying to figure out how I bring all that together and allow them a place to connect and feel like they're being part of something. That's what I'm kind of figuring out now, because they all are coming from different backgrounds, and which is fine. It's cool. It's just, how do you get that to cohesiveness to kind of happen?
That's good. Yeah, great insight, you guys. I mean, great insight. And so he kind of goes into, and again, I think you guys both kind of even answer this or looking at, and we won't answer it now. We'll look at it at the very end here. But do adults in your church community struggle to empathize with the young adults you know? I think Jade, you'd say like, yeah, they actually do, right? Like there is a missing link sometimes, and sometimes it just again may be the life is just so different today than what it used to be, and it's as we get older, we tend to get maybe a little bit stuck in the ways too. You tend to see that with older people too, where and so I would say a lot of what we're going to be doing in young adult ministry going forward is just reframing reality. Right. So it's this whole, like, instead of reacting to things, how can we reframe the reality? And so how can we then again, Jaden, for you as a young, 20 something, to be able to reframe what people your age are actually going through in a healthy way, that it's not this, it's that they actually the young adults that you're working with actually need more support than ever from people in the local church, and not a critique, right? They don't need well, you're just, again, everybody wants to go to what they're facing or this or that, or, they all want to make, we make all these statements, right? Like, and so do young adults too, right? Like young adults always make statements too. I'll never be able to afford to own a home. I'm never gonna, I hear this stuff all the time. I'm not going to live a long life. There's even this amongst young adults that really truly don't believe they're going to live a super long life, and for whatever reason. And there's also just this bent towards mental health and different things too. I'm always anxious. I'm always this or that. I never have enough resources, never have enough finances. In which we're going to talk through some of that. But again, how can we come alongside and how can we reframe, I think, what's there? And that's, I think, a lot of what we'll do. So talked about, the difference, 18 to 29-year-olds, these emerging young adults, it's interesting how their life has changed. So one of them they talked about is gap years. And it talked about how, like, it started off with saying more young people are taking time off to do something different before enlisting in the military, joining the workforce, or attending college. And what's interesting is, again, we have a 17-year-old who turns 18 and literally next month, and is a senior in high school, who is like, hey, I think I may want to go into the Army, but I may want to take a year off before. And we were like, well, like, right, like the 49-year-old dad, he's like, whoa, bro, like that's not an option. Like, and here's the difference. It's like, is it delay in reality, or is it just that life actually doesn't have to go as fast as it was? And so we've, as Susan and I talked about, like, hey, like, talk to us about this. What does this mean? It doesn't mean it's not about delay in reality, but like maybe there is a thing where it's like, hey, we need to sit back and listen. Why is that? The young people, why is it, again, as a parent, it almost feels like, well, I didn't do my job right, or did I lost something, like I'm not, because again, it wasn't my traditional route. But gap years was one of the things kind of mentioned here. It's not about delaying adulthood. Again, it's an alternative that maybe set them up for future growth. Matter of fact, Travis was talking, Matt Irvine was talking, and from Quest there at Southern Wesleyan, and he said he actually took a gap year way back in the day when nobody was taking gap years. And he actually said it was that he did YWAM. He went 8 months with YWAM, did a bunch of stuff. And he said, I actually went into college mature, or more mature than I would have been. And it set me up for a whole different trajectory of life, and so it's interesting how that happened. My wife, Susan, she actually took a year off back in, I think it was 96, when she was a junior in college, to go to Russia with global partners through the YES program, or whatever they used to call it back in the day. And it actually, again, set the trajectory of her life completely different, and still going forward that way, which again, her ultimate call to ministry, then going, and being in Bosnia, and then coming back, and then living in the States, and what she even does today in women in ministry is Master of Global Leadership, teaching missiology and all this stuff. And so it's interesting how, again, not traditional, always, but is becoming more traditional. So talked about gap years. This was interesting too. On page 21, talked about the average length of college is 150% now. This one actually blew my mind, but then I thought about it, I was like, wow. So they're saying that, again, it was interesting here. 2/3 of students who start at college finish in 6 years. So no longer is it a traditional 4-year route, right? So it's interesting that, again, as a parent, and I'll be honest, it's like, again, now my daughter lost her mom and needed to come home, but there's a part of me that's like, oh, did I let her down? Did I not do enough? It's going to take her 5 years. Well, it took me 5 years to graduate too. I ran for my call to ministry. I was going, I was chasing finances and accounting and this and that. And then, so I had 2 years. But then when I transferred into Bible college, it was like, oh, you still have to take 90 credits at core and all these humanity classes. And so I had 2 years of college, went to Indiana Wesleyan, and they sat me down and said, you still have to take 106 credits. And I'm like, I just transferred 64 credits here. And they're like, you still have to take. And so I hunkered down and made it happen. But it's just, again, it's interesting. 2/3 taken 150% is what they call it now. So different in how we're reaching people too, right? So even college age ministry becomes longer, multiple and unequal jobs, again, that was an interesting thought here too, of, a typical young adult will hold 8.2 jobs between 18 and 33. It's a lot of jobs, a lot of different jobs. And again, he coined that phrase of, it's not about working 9 to 5, but 5 to 9. Like, it may be hard to find a full-time job, or they're just not there nearly as much as what we think they would be. I'd love if you guys have some thoughts on that one. And then I love the whole financial goals and woes, like the average student debt amongst a young adult is just under $38,000. They're going to pay close to $2,000 in loan interest each year over 20 years, and so again, when you look at less than 40% of those are under the age of 35 are homeowners. And again, only about 20% of young adults were deemed financially stable. And so you have this whole, again, we used to joke about it. Well, a kid graduates college and what do? Well, they move back home. Well, the reality may be that may be what has to happen. It's not because it's bad, but it may be because it's to actually help them become financially stable quicker. And so it's super interesting for me to look and to go, we just moved to Timnath, which is attached to Fort Collins here. And it's like, like in most areas in the country, it's just absolutely like rocketing up and to the right, where there's our builder has 3 townhouses for sale. And so I asked Darius, our sales guy who sold us the house, he said, I said, how much these townhouses go for? Because it's young people, right? It's young couples, it's young families. I met a girl who I thought she didn't even look 18, who moved into one. And he said, we have 3 for sale. They're between $490,000 and $540,000 for a townhome. A townhome. 2 bedroom, 2 bath, 1,400 square feet townhome in Colorado. And I'm just going, how is this even sustainable in this market or area for young people? So financial goals there. And then it also talked, I'll cruise through here, delayed marriage and parenthood. I think we see this often. Not always. We're going to see young people getting married and having young kids, but we're also seeing this delayed. I think the average age is 29 for a female and 27 for a male of getting married, which is unique. And then the other one, and the couple of big ones here at the end were mental health. Highest rates of mental illness were reported between young adults. And I think, again, how does that, again, this all shapes how we do young adult ministry now, and then racial diversity. And again, how, again, by 2027, the young adult population will reach a tipping point, will actually become more diverse than any other generation before. And so it's interesting, and it kind of close with that, but would love to know from you guys. And again, it ended with the positive, right? The optimism, like amongst everything else that may be falling apart, there's an overwhelming optimism among young adults and even young adult ministry and those who are there. Because again, they may be church suspicious, but man, they're spiritually alive and awake. And I think I want to know. So out of those, what have you guys seen? Where have you seen some stuff with working with young adults to speak into, or what out of those things mentioned, like what kind of maybe grabbed your heart and mind?
I think
mean-
like, oh no, go ahead.
You got it.
Okay. Yeah, it just like you were talking about, it seemed like for those that are above that young adult stage, it seemed like, life was kind of like, this is what you do, this is the order. And that really has changed. But I think that also creates an opportunity for those that I've talked to. They don't always know like which path to take. It's like, okay, now I have all these options. What do I do? I don't know what I want to do as a career. So what do I do now? It seems like they're kind of overwhelmed with options too. And they're kind of looking for like, what is that clarity? What is that purpose? Like, what am I supposed to do next too? And I think a lot of these things like that they're talking about in this first chapter are kind of results of that, talking about like multiple jobs and stuff. Cause I know like I have a teen in mind, young adult in mind right now, who's probably had 5 or 6 jobs here recently, because they just don't know exactly what they want to do. And just helping them figure that out. Like, what is your purpose? What do you feel like your calling and passion are? So yeah, I feel like this is so true. Especially like delayed marriage and stuff. I know a couple that really don't have plans right now. Like they just kind of want to live life and kind of, just see what's going to happen next, which I think is cool and everything. I wish, part of me wishes I'd maybe follow that a little bit, kind of like, Matt said, and a few other friends have done that, just kind of like, what does God have, prepared for my life? What experience is going to help me? But trying to help them navigate through that and what that means, that, you don't have to, if you don't want to get married or feel like you have to find the love of your life in the next year, what that looks like, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's funny when you're talking, Ian, because like all of that, it's like I see in myself as a young adult, but also a lot of like my friends and people in our congregation. Like it took me 5 years to complete, like 5.5 years to complete my degree, because I got married after my sophomore year of college, and that was also during COVID, and my husband's Canadian, and so he was in his third year and we were in Kingswood in Canada, and we transferred to Oklahoma Wesleyan for his fourth year. And so he got a degree at Kingswood, a 2-year degree. I got a 2-year degree. He was going in his third year. And as he was going into his fourth year, that's when we got married, and we went to Oklahoma Wesleyan University so we could get married in the States and transfer off of visas that way. And for that fourth year, we were in Oklahoma, and I was like, well, one of us like needs to work because they didn't have marriage housing. We couldn't like just put that a part of our package. Like we had to have an apartment. I'm like, well, we have to pay for that apartment, and a job at this Oklahoma Wesleyan's coffee shop is not gonna like pay the bills for rent and groceries. And so I got a job at a church there and hated what I did because it was not any aligned with my calling or passions or giftings. And it was definitely hard, a hard 8 to 9 months. And then we came back to Sioux Falls, and I grew up in Sioux Falls. I did not want to come back to Sioux Falls. We got a lot of different few different offers from different churches, and I was like, I literally will go anywhere else but Sioux Falls. I didn't want to come back to Sioux Falls. I was like, I feel like it was the easy way to get a job in ministry, but God had different ideas in mind for us. So we ended up back in Sioux Falls, and it's been the best thing for us. But yeah, I took the untraditional route. I went back to school after we moved here to Sioux Falls. So I was a full-time pastor and a full-time student, and then I got pregnant. So then I became a full-time mom, and when I was on maternity leave, I was still in school, and I just stuck to it. And I was like, I just have to grind this out, and it's gonna suck for a while, but it was manageable. And now that's just something that I can speak from, of a place of I did something untraditionally, very untraditionally, but I still was able to make it work and the grind of it. And I think a lot of young adults are in the mentality that if they just grind through it, like they can get through it, but there's also a lot of overwhelming and anxiousness that can come from young adults doing so many different things and wanting to be a part of different things.
So true, so true. Yeah, I think again that's a great example, right? Of I think what we're seeing here, and I think again, the intro in chapter 1 really just kind of set up. I think what's going to be coming, as we kind of get into the chapters ahead. And again, I'm hoping again we'll invite some more people, get some more people on here. I know another one of my Celebrate One, Seth was supposed to jump on here too, Jay, and I saw, but wasn't able to get on. But as we're looking at kind of like the the path here, we're going to move into like the faith of young adults and growing young adult churches here next week. A couple of things I just want to leave you with. If you don't have the book, again, I put a couple links in there. I can send them to you as well too. Feel free to reach out. A couple things for you just to think about is, think about the young adults, what do you appreciate about them? What's something that you sense that you didn't know or understand about them, and reflect on that. I thought that it's good. So good thoughts here. So think about young adults, for young adults, maybe reach out to a young adult and ask them about one of the snapshots above, talking about, hey, what was it like to have a gap year? What was it like? What are your thoughts with financial stuff? Or what are your thoughts with mental health illness in your generation? I just think, again, these are actually very good practical things that I think would help us. And I love the last one here for your congregation. And I think this is maybe where we'll speak into a little bit, maybe next week. So I want you to think on it, what's your hope for your congregation's young adult ministry? Like beyond just the young adults, like how do we elevate this? Again, my goal is, again, being the young adult catalyst, is again that we actually can create a momentum and a movement amongst the Wesleyan church in this area, where we find churches. Again, we see this in youth ministry, we see this in kids ministry, sometimes college, we see it in small groups, or the multiplication movement of the Wesleyan church, or from district, or different things. But again, what are we actually doing to reach this generation? And so whether it's 18 to 29, 18 to 34, however you're going to define it, whether it's college age kids, young adults, young marrieds, whatever that may be, like, again, our goal is what are we going to want to see? What's your hope for the congregation, for your congregation's young adult ministry? And again, because part of it, I think, is going to be, how do we bring them along? So again, my goal is as a catalyst to get you guys resources. My goal is to get you guys connected with one another. I do have about 60 churches who filled out a Google form so far. I've got about 400 or 500 that I'm waiting to hear back from. I don't necessarily know that there's 400 or 500 churches in the Wesleyan Church that have an active young adult ministry, but I do believe there's probably 60 to 100. And again, from that 60 to 100, to kind of form a young adult catalyst team around me. And again, our goal is to kind of like lead that charge across the denomination, stuff like that. So next week too, I want to have some thoughts and stuff. As a matter of fact, I'll probably have another Google form. A couple things I'll leave you with here before I probably kind of close this out and be sensitive to time would be, first one would be is Follows coming up. This is the first time ever in the history of the Follow Convention that they've actually going to have a young adult track. Now, I know we realize that there's probably gonna be a lot of young adults who go as youth leaders and different things, stuff like that. But then the goal is actually probably to have the young adults all have the same lunchtime, and then they can attend the breakouts when their students are at breakouts. So it won't be necessarily during a time where they're going to be heavily needed to supervise or lead a small group, of their students. It may be like, hey, students, you know where to go. I'm in charge of 3 high school boys. You need to go to this, you're going to go to lunch at this time and these breakouts. So we're going to actually have some some tracks for that. We're also going to have some young adult ministry now tracks too, like as far as like just getting youth pastors, leaders, district superintendents will be there, and people who just want to talk about young adult ministry and kind of what I envision. My wife and I'll probably teach a workshop on young adult ministry and stuff. And then I'll be looking for people who'd be interested in teaching young adult ministry tracks too. So we think we're going to need 4 to 6 speakers who'll be doing some stuff. So again, we want there to be a young adult track there. So kind of what we're offering for young adults just to know is Jim Lowe and a couple others will be doing like a prayer walk every morning over the convention areas, over different things throughout the city, hotels and stuff like that. There'll be an opportunity for young adults to join in a prayer walk. They'll obviously be in the main sessions that we have. They'll have their own breakout sessions. And then each night, so Thursday, Friday, and Saturday night, there'll be a young adult offering too. So the first night, Thursday, we think we're just going to do like a resource and networking session. So again, we kind of envision this to be we think our goal would be 200 to 250 young adults kind of coming together. So our goal will be is to offer them in a convention room, like some coffee, some desserts away from the students after the main session. So like from after the kids, when the kids go to the fun stuff in the iZone, we would get the young adults there for maybe an hour together to resource and network. We'll probably have some coffee and desserts, and then maybe have them in sections all the way around. So like different things that they could resource with. So, hey, I'm a woman who's called to ministry. Hey, we're going to have a group of people here. I'm interested in missions. Or, hey, I'm a marketplace leader, or I feel like called to worship over here. Just some different things, just some completely different themes to kind of get to resource and get to know one another. And then probably do like a short like worship and prayer time with them too, to kind of pull them together the first night. The second night is the big concert. So again, I think that they've got scheduled for the big concerts and stuff like that. So we won't have anything there. And then the last night we talked about gathering again. Again, we'll have breakouts during the week and stuff like that during those 2 days before, but kind of maybe doing whether it's an ice skating thing or what, or some different things that would be for them. I said, I think by the time all of us get to that end at like 9 p.m. or whatever on that, whatever, I can't remember what night it is, Saturday night or whatever the night of the 30th is, they're going to be 2.5 days of being up. So I said, let's not wait to do something powerful then. They're going to be like, we hop on a bus tomorrow or a plane or in a car and head home first thing in the morning. So, but we'll do something kind of for that. So that's kind of where we're at in what's happening there. And like I said, I'll probably have a Google form that'll go out to say, hey, who would be interested in being a part of a young adult Catalyst team for the Wesleyan Church in general, and then what are some thoughts you have for follow as far as like breakouts and speakers as we are, putting some stuff together. I've got to get a bunch of things too. So we're gonna want guy speakers, female speakers, we want people who are, again, from all different ethnicities and stuff like that too. So working on that. So we'll shoot some thoughts on that. We'll talk a little bit about that too in the days ahead too. And again, would love to get your input. You guys can reach out with anything if you're like, I need resources, different things. We'll be sharing, again, our goal is through kind of like through our hub, through Next Gen, is to create not just resources for kids and youth workers, but also for young adult ministry as well too. So just be looking for that as well. As there's not nearly as many resources, but we're going to get them to you. Okay. All right. Well, hey, let me pray for us here. And like I said, get the word out. I'll be sharing the links and different things. I know several couldn't get on. I think there's probably some confusion over time a little bit too. I had several people, but we'll definitely meet the next 3 weeks at this time, and then on Thursdays, and then I'm hoping on that last week right before Thanksgiving. I'm waiting to hear back from Steve Argue to see what's going to be his best time. He's already agreed to jump on the call to talk with young adult leaders from all over the Global Wesleyan Church, and I know I had some district superintendents who were interested in even hearing some of his thoughts and comments and stuff like that. Sound good? Awesome, man. Hey, let me pray for you guys and we'll get going today, man. Father God, just grateful for the morning. Just, man, it's super encouraging just to hear from a few leaders who are doing your work in shaping the kingdom in their part of the country. Father, I lift up their spirits to you, Father. I just pray that you would just give them just a sense of creativity, a sense of passion and vision to reach those who are, again, post high, but haven't fully gotten quite into the adult stage of life, whether it's 18 to 29 or 34. Father, I just pray that we would love them and listen to them and reach out in a way that encourages them and that draws them ultimately closer to you. So Father, again, I pray for creativity. I pray for the spaces and places where we need to be to where we can listen and where we can pour into. And more than anything, Father, grow this team and grow this ministry, and help us to really push forward and be a catalyst of what's happening in young adult ministry throughout the global Wesleyan Church. Lord, we love you. We need you. And again, apart from you, we can do nothing. So may we stay attached to the vine today. We ask this in Jesus' name. Amen. Well, awesome, guys. And if you need anything, again, reach out. Like, don't hesitate there. If you're like, hey, I'd love to get on, hop on another call and stuff like that. Like I said, I've kind of got you guys in spreadsheets, and we'll stay connected here. Okay.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Awesome, man. We'll chat
Thank
soon.
you.
Good to see you guys. Have a great day.
You too.